Welcome, Carrie and Meredith. Welcome, Terry. Welcome, Gil. Welcome, Lena.
I'm not on mute anymore. I'm gonna.
Who is Bob? Bob, can we see you, please?
Boker Tov,
Mr. Bob.
Bob Carroll.
Oh, welcome, Bob Carroll.
Well, we're guessing.
We're guessing it's Bob Carroll.
Oh, okay. Hi, Florence. Where's Sid hiding?
He'll be here shortly.
All right.
Hi,
Hi,
Florence.
Nancy. Hi, Molly. Nice background, Gail. So we will wait a couple more minutes before we start, if you don't mind. Good morning, Kara.
Good morning.
Hi. Nothing. What's going on with you? Food. No.
Okay, we will start at this point. Noam, if you could, what happened, Noam? Noam, what happened to?
Hi, shalom. Shalom, everyone.
Okay, there you are. Okay, so we will start at this point, and as new people join in, they'll be fine. So Noam Demsky is a film director and producer that brings to the screen fresh perspective about the essence and identity of contemporary Israeli Jewry. Other Demsky documentaries include The Mediators, The Strength to Tell, Four Sons, The Valderrama Sisters, The Orphans Club, Yedidia's Treasure, etc. As you can see, it's quite prolific documentary maker. Those of you that would like to see some of these documentaries, just reach out to me, and I will get you links to those documentaries. Um, uh, just a little bit more housekeeping. We want to thank the Israeli Committee for bringing this program, as well as other programs throughout the year. I would also like to thank Seth Front for our Director of Communication for obviously bringing this to us. Um, just a couple more items. On July 23rd, Kabbalat Shabbat, we're co-sponsoring with the Social Justice Committee a presentation by the Anti-Defamation League about the rise of anti-Semitism. And on August 14th, please join us for a Havdalah service and Israel movie night. So without further ado, hopefully you all have seen the screening of this movie, documentary on the Fringe. Very, very well done documentary, I have to say. And at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Noam to moderate a discussion about this very, very important presentation of another side in the Israeli society that a lot of us, including myself, we're not all that familiar with. So Noam, the floor is yours.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Do you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Raise your hand. Very good. Okay. Thank you for the introduction, Ziggy. And I suppose everyone saw the movie, right? Very good. Okay. So, this is my second film. It's already 20 years passed already, since over 20 years, 23 years already have passed since I directed this film. And every time I watch the film, so I feel when I decide screening it to audience, I have in the beginning I have a pretty bad feeling. It's an old movie. Many things have gone already. In Hebrew you say "Harbe mayim zarmu bayarden," means a lot of water passed over in the Jordan Valley, in the Jordan River. So what is it? But I watched the movie once again, and I feel it's very, very relevant. It is still a relevant film, and I could tell you, I try on my films to find very in Hebrew you say נושאים חשובים. So it's very important issues for me to make movies. When you make a documentary, it takes me between 2 years to 3 years to make a documentary, to research it, to film it, to edit it. And when I go into a project into one of these projects, I feel I want to go into a project. I feel the topic is important. The topic is important for me at first, and it's important for the viewers too. And it's important. I think it's. I feel when I go into a documentary, there's words in Hebrew you say "tikkun olam." I don't know how you translate tikkun olam.
We all understand what that means.
Everyone understands. Okay, so how do you say it in English, tikkun olam?
Doing good.
Repair the world.
Repairing the world. But
Repairing the world. So I feel I have the opportunity to do a tikkun olam through my movies. And 25 years ago, when I started the research on the movie, I felt that there's a very big, maybe I could call it an anger between the secular society in Israel and towards the Haredi world in Israel. And when I try to be very specific and to understand where is the big problem. Where is the problem? Where is, you know, the tension, and even I could say a hard word, the hate between the secular society in Israel to the Haredim. It was in the point, the Haredim, most of them, almost all of them, didn't go into the army. We could talk about it maybe later. Why don't they go into the army? It's, you know, we could open it up. But I felt that, you know, there's, when, you know, it's very, very easy for us as a society, as a community, as people, to go up like in a you know, how do you say that, in a bird's eye, you know, in Hebrew you say today rachfan in English is a how do you say rachfan in English? I'm trying. Rachfan means, you know, when you rachfan, dawn, right? A dawn is when you go with a camera up on in the eye. Am I right?
Yeah, drone.
How do you say the word?
Drone. D-R-O-N-E, drone.
Drone. Okay. So I felt, you know, most, you know, when you see people generally in Israel, when you see demonstrations of Haredim, usually you see a long shot, you know, from, it looks like it was taken from a drone, you know, from very far, you see only black hats, but you hardly could, I don't think you never see the eyes of the people. And I was telling myself, I want to do a film about the Haredim, and I want to see their eyes. I want to see, you know, them personally. I want to understand that there are different kinds of people there. It's not like you take, you know, if I go to China, for me, you know, all the Chinese people look the same, but you know, there's so much different each in the, you know. So I felt the same in the Haredi world. I felt that people in Israel look at them as something, you know, like they look at the Chinese people, you know. But it's very easy to see that when you don't look at, you don't stand in the eye level of these people, and you don't see, you know, the eyes. When you go back on the long shot, so you see, you know, many people, so it's easier to say, okay, it's a big crowd, and all of them are Haredim, and they look alike, and they're all the same. But in my film, I wanted to say, no, listen, there's different people here. There are Haredim who are from Hasidic background, and the Haredim who come from Litvak background. The Haredim who come from Ashkenazi families, and Haredim who come from a Sephardi family. And Haredim who come from Baalei Tshuva, you know, people who became religious. Yeah. So I had a terrific opportunity. And at the same time I was thinking of making the film, starting of researching, I heard that for the first time in many years, there's a group of Haredim who are going into the army together. You know, for many years, I think it was since the Yom Kippur War, since 1973, that was the last time that the Haredi group went into the army together. So 25 years later, the Haredim organized a group of youth that would go into the army together, and I decided to film them. I didn't get into the first group, I got into the second group. And we're talking about 23 years ago. I could continue on speaking, but I would really like if people would like to share their thoughts after the screening, share maybe some questions or doubts or anything there, you know. Bevakasha, please.
So let me start with the first question. So the Haredi Nachal, what number does it really represent? In other words, do we see thousands of Haredim enlist every year? Is it hundreds? Is it dozens? How successful is this program?
Okay, it's a very good question. That was a question, I came back, in the last few months asking myself, what happened since then? Because then they were, they were maybe 150, 100, between 100 to 200 Haredim going into the army each year. Today, I could say that in the army today, there are around close to 3,000 or 4,000 Haredim in the army right now, serving. You have to understand still, in the Haredi world, I think they're much more open to understand that is part of the way, things should go, or that is part of the answer for children who don't want to sit and study, who can't sit and study in yeshivot. But we shouldn't, be confused. The rabbis, the Haredi rabbis, wouldn't let a young Haredi who could sit and study, who knows how to learn in a yeshiva, to get out of it. Most of the Haredi who go into the army are Haredim who couldn't, like many people, different people can't, they can't just sit and study for day and night. I think also you saw that in the movie, in the film, when I went filming, I thought I'm going to see many, in Hebrew you say, Bechorei Yeshiva, Yeshiva Bochels. You know what? Bechorei Yeshiva means, students in Yeshivot who are going into the army. And I found there, I was sure I'm going to find the, nice kids who are sitting and studying, who are going into the army. And I found there, I could say at least 60% of the youth who went into the army are youth at risk. Haredi youth at risk. So, I was shocked when I saw that, because I didn't expect seeing, I was expecting seeing Haredim in the army, but I saw something else. Haredi, people who come out of the Haredi world. I see Aviva is raising a hand, right?
Yeah, there are so many different sects, different groups of Haredi. Are there those, do only certain of those groups go into the army, and the other ones, they will not allow them to go no matter what?
You saw the movie, in the movie there's Shmulik. Shmulik is the guy who came from the Satmar.
Right.
From the Jerusalem Satmar, so he wasn't, he didn't ask for permission. And in this point, already these kids are, they're not 15 or 16 years old. Some of them are 19, 20, 21. So if they decide to do something, they won't, some of them won't ask for permission because they won't get it. And that's what happened in this extreme Haredi community, the Satmar community Shmulik came from. As you saw, his parents didn't, he wasn't in contact with his parents. He had his own apartment in Jerusalem. He was living there. But I think for your question, Aviva, your question, I think there are certain Haredim, certain communities who are more open, and some of them are much more closed. And it's, I think it's in the movie too. One of the guys says, when I go back home, I take off my uniform and I wear my black clothes once again. People are sometimes are embarrassed and sometimes are afraid of coming back with the uniform.
It's also out of respect.
Right, it's right, but that, who said it that right now?
I did. Because they, like
Yeah.
the guy, the mother who was okay with him going, but not for the rest of the family to see him like that. And he would change, like out of
But from my point of view, when my child, my son went into the army, I was very proud of him. My daughter right now is in the army up north. She's teaching youth at soldiers who are youth at risk, and she's teaching them mathematics, and they're going to do the tests to become part of the Israeli society. If they have the degree, and I'm very proud of her. And when you say a Haredi mother, a Haredi soldier takes off his uniform and comes home different because he wants to respect, it's very harmful too. It's not easy to hear that.
Noam,
Yeah.
this is Karen. I was interested to understand, there were a number in the movie, at least several of the rabbis, Haredim rabbis, were involved intimately in the whole enlistment and training process. And I was curious to know how they were received or perceived in the Haredim rabbinate community after, sort of taking the position that, it's okay for Haredim to serve. And that was a big change 20 years ago. I don't know what it's like today, whether more rabbis are accepting of that process. Obviously, there's more Haredim serving now, as you said, but it was interesting that they went out on a limb, and at least the way I perceived it, they went out on a limb.
Went out on?
Went out on a limb. They sort of took a risk. They took a risk to become supportive of these people serving, enlisting in the army and serving.
Exactly. I could tell you about Rabbi Yoel. Rabbi Yoel is in the film. He's now in his late 80s. And he went, he was a very big educator in Israel, a Haredi educator. And he understood that you can't give the same path to all the young Haredim. If someone can't sit and study, he shouldn't, just sit outside in the streets. He should go into the army. But many people, there were a few times he told me that people threw eggs on him on the street, in the Haredi street. But I think today things are changing. I spoke to in the last few months, to a few Haredi rabbis who you have to understand that, in the Haredi world now, for the last 20 years, the maybe over, I think, 15 or 20,000 Haredi, maybe a bit less, maybe 15,000 Haredi soldiers went through the army. And when we say 15,000 Haredim, it means their families, some of them were happy, some of them weren't happy, some of them, it's not a strange thing anymore. It's not easy. It's difficult, but I think, and I'm not sure it's so common, but it's something that people are getting used to, that there are Haredim in the army. And I think it's a very, if I think of it, I would have hoped that things would change faster, but it's a process. And I see it is a process, and it's a process that I think in 15 years, things are going to be a bit different. And there's other thing, I think if I'll take the COVID-19, that we're still in it in Israel, you too, right now. I think the Haredi and the Haredi family, the simple Haredi family, the simple Haredi youngster, understands that they were, and Israel, at least it's Israel, that the rabbis did some mistakes in opening schools, in having the vaccine or not having the vaccine. So there are all kinds of different things. And I think the Haredi world is opening up now to understand that they could be more. It's not. It's still a big process, but to be more independent and to think independently also.
Florence is asking a question.
That's it. Two questions. One has to do with what is the Torah reason that they won't go into? I don't understand from a religious aspect why they can't serve. And the second question is, now that you've mentioned a lot of Haredi have any of them stayed on and taken on more higher positions, officer positions and things like that in the armed services?
Okay. Okay, thank you, Sid, for your question. So I'll answer your first question first. And, you know, the Haredim are not Zionists. So I was raised in a Zionist family, and they are not Zionists. They came to Israel, and, you know, in the purpose of, I believe, the purpose of the Zionist movement, I think, and the establishing of the country of Israel and living in Israel is part of the Geula. Geula, how do you say Geula in English?
Redemption. Redemption.
Redemption. It's part of the process of the Mashiach to come one day, and I think the establishment of the country of Israel is a big factor in this process, and the Haredim don't believe in it, and the Haredim don't think we're in the process of Geula, of redemption. You know, the Haredim, when they, how could I say, when I'm thinking together with them, talking, you know, the Haredim, they live in the feeling, you know, of survivors from the Holocaust. What do I mean? In the Holocaust, that's the truth. You know, most of the people who learn Torah, most of the rabbis, most of the synagogues and the Batei Midrash. Batei Midrash is the schools and the yeshivot were gone. They feel that they have to rebuild the Torah world from the beginning and to reserve it too. And they feel they have a very big mission to do. And the mission of the army is not part of it. The mission of the Torah is the most important. And now you have to understand that the Haredi, you know, all of our grandparents or great grandparents came from the shtetl, right? And the shtetl was a Jewish, maybe a city or maybe a little town or maybe a little, and most of these places were very closed, very. They were, you know, when the Nazis, I don't want to say, one moment, I'm trying to, the Haredis are trying to be isolated, to live in their own towns, in their own neighborhoods, and without secular life around, without secular people to tell them. That's the reason if it's in Jerusalem, they have their own neighbors in Jerusalem. if it's different kind of cities like Modi'in Elite, like Beitar Elite, like Immanuel, so all kinds of different cities who are only of Haredim. So in the minute you tell them, listen, people, go into the army, and the army is, even though the army is going to go, towards them and give them to be in their own groups and their own, but it's not easy because the army is the army in the end, and you can't tell them, they can't be isolated. It's for the Haredim, for the Haredim, the isolate to be in a so-called ghetto, from to be in their own neighborhoods. That is the way to continue their tradition. And if you try to mix it up, there'll be there'll be much tension there. And now for your last question, Sid, there are Haredim who are officers in the army. I don't think it's many, but some of them are. Yes, they continue on being. Some of them continue on being officers, and some of them became officers of the new Haredim who came into the army.
Thank you.
Yes, David. David, you're muted.
Yeah, I have to unmute. Okay. Question I have is, of those, the Haredim that go into the army, how many of them decide after their army experience that they don't go back to the movement and they end up going more secular, still religious, but perhaps they integrate themselves more into the greater Israel?
I don't have, the exact answer to, because I don't know I can't give you exact numbers, but I could tell you that in the army, they are in separate groups, and they have their own, every day they have a lesson, a Torah lesson, and they have services every day. They have to go into the part of it. As I said in the beginning, a big part of these soldiers they were youth at risk from before, and they weren't so religious. Some of them weren't religious already when they got into the army, but I think I know when today, some of them went back into the Haredi society, and they live there, but I think they live there differently than their parents. They're opened up already. In the minute you do army service, you could go into the university later. You could go work. The big problem in Israel is that when you don't do army service, so you can't go and work. It's in Hebrew you say you work b'shachor, black. How do you say that in English? You don't
Under the table.
papers.
Under the table.
Under the table. So many Haredim work under the table because they're not. They should be sitting and studying in the yeshivot, but they can't sit and study in yeshiva because it's too hard for them. Or maybe they already got married and they have a child, two childs, and they have to they have to bring food home. So they work under the table. And after they have 3 or 4 children, they could start working because they have many children. The army doesn't want them anymore, but they can't go study, So they live their own poor life, and it's a big tragedy. And what's happening now with the Haredi soldiers is that after they go into the army, they could go back and sit and I could tell you about the soldiers who are in the film. There's one of them who is an accountant in Tel Aviv, Iriyat Tel Aviv, in Tel Aviv
City, yeah.
City Hall. City Hall.
City Hall, Tel Aviv City Hall. The other one is a officer in the police in a police station. A third one, Shmulik, is a bus driver. But people after after a Haredi service could go and can go, and the army also helps them. The government helps them to go back and study, either study to have a good job, or either study in university. And I think that's what happens in the families. The young brothers see them and say, okay, I see they have good lives now. I see so I think something is happening there.
Thank you. Toda rabba. It's a slow process, but I guess it's a matter of integrating, and it's hard to know. Wish them all the success and the luck.
Yeah.
Noam, I have a question. Just because you have interviewed those people, while they serve, some of them are fighters, and I was thinking, if there is another war like Yom Kippur, God forbid, and there is a war like that, do you think they will start eating and break the Sabbath and won't have any problem? Because I know in Yom Kippur, they did a documentary, some semi-religious, they were conservative at the time, had a problem breaking Yom Kippur. Then it took like lots of effort from their commanders to force them to start eating and to go, because they were about to be fighting. Do you think those Haredi will be willing and won't cause any problems if something like that happens?
I really hope so. I really hope so, because it's, you have to eat when you're fighting. We just now, right now, last Friday, we finished, there's Talmud Bavli. How do you say Talmud Bavli in English?
Babylonian.
The Babylonian Talmud. We just finished learning right now, when this is a Daf Yomi. Daf Yomi means you study every day a different page. And we just finished studying Masechet Yoma. Masechet Yoma is dealing with Yom Kippur. It's a whole Masechet that deals with Yom Kippur. It's over 90 pages, which deal with Yom Kippur. And one of the questions is in the Masechet, in the Gemara over there, is what does someone who's sick, how do we take care of him? What is he allowed to eat, and what doesn't he allowed to eat? The Gemara doesn't bring even the word rabbi. So the Gemara talks about the doctor. The doctor has to decide if this person who's sick could eat or can't eat. In the army, the officer, whoever's in charge in the army, should say you could eat or you could fast right now. It's not a matter of religious or not. It's a matter of life and death. And people should. I'm sure people in the army, I hope so, would act that way.
So you never actually discuss this matter with them? Because I'm not even talking about eating. I'm talking about breaking the Sabbath. Okay, you guys have to go to Gaza now. Get on your jeeps and start going. Do you think they will? With no problem?
Yeah, sure. Soldiers will, yeah. I'm religious too, and I had no doubt.
You're not Haredi. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, but I don't think I'm less religious than they are. And
Okay.
when I was in the army, and that's what I got a command of going into the jeep and driving or doing something else. There's no, you do that. That's part of the part of life.
Robin, go ahead. Unmute yourself, Robin.
Yes, I did. Thank you. I was just wondering, we saw that the soldiers really cared for each other, like when they were on their run, they were helping each other on and encouraging and so on. I was wondering what kind of relationship these guys have maintained after their service. I know, for example, some people know that my son was he was served in IDF. He was Sanchanim in Sanchanim, and he goes back for weddings and so on because they're so close. I was wondering, with the Haredim, do they build that same kind of relationship, or they all go their own separate ways?
I'm sure, there are, I don't know. I don't have the same, I don't know, but I'm sure that there are people who keep in contact and a very close relationship, and some don't, but I don't have a good answer to it.
You have to do a follow-up.
Yeah.
Part two.
I could tell you a very interesting thing that happened during the film. When we had the premiere of the film, we had a very big premiere for the film, and in Jerusalem Cinematheque, 500 people, and all the soldiers were invited.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked around. I said, "Where's Shmulik?" Shmulik is a guy who goes, and his mother doesn't want him to go into the house, and he goes back to Mea Shearim. He walks away. He talks to his young brother. Anyway, Kalmi, exactly. So I asked, "Where's Shmulik right now?" So people told me he didn't hear. His father just passed away a few hours ago. So he didn't come to the premiere, and later on, I called him up. I heard the whole story. What happened was, he got no telephones yet. Those 22 years ago. So he got a phone call, the army got a phone call, said his father passed away from a heart attack, and they took him and they drove him to the funeral, in Jerusalem, especially the Haredi Satmar, or they bury in the same day. They don't wait. They just bury the people who die. And the same day, they don't leave they don't leave someone who's dead at night. So he got there with his uniform to the funeral, and he just got into the funeral, and they were burying his father. He was in the middle. He came into the middle, and his uncle saw him coming and yelled at him and said out loud, "You're the one who killed your father." And he felt very bad afterwards. He went home, and he was packing his suit. He was packing his. He planned to leave, and to sit shiva in a different place in his own apartment alone. He got a phone call from the Toldot Aharon Rebbe. The Toldot Aharon Rebbe is the Rebbe of the Hasidim, the main extreme Hasidim, who walk with in Hebrew we call them zebra, who walk with the white and black pasim. How do you say that? The clothes. And he got a phone call from the Rebbe saying, "Listen, I knew your father. Your father died from a heart attack. He was sick. You don't have nothing to do with it. I want you to sit and mourn, be on the Shiva with your family together, and tell your friends in the army to come over to here, to Mea Shearim, and to Lenachem, to be, to sit with you.
Give their condolences.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what he did. And, it's something very nice to understand, even though this rabbi was very extreme. He felt Shmulik did the wrong thing going into the army. He felt this is, it's something, but he understood to separate two things, to understand this is family, and to understand that Shmulik should sit with his family and bring his friends from the army into this house. So I'm sure there's all kinds of different stories going on of different, when things happen, So it's not only black and white. There's a lot of different colors coming to the story. Okay, anyone else with the?
I have just a comment. I've been watching Commandments on Prime. It's a 2-season series about exactly the Haredim going into the army, and it's really interesting because Noam did it like 22 years ago, the documentary, and this is a new season, a series. It's called The Commandments. I highly recommend it, and you guys will see the exact or more aspect of the troubles that these soldiers are going through this season. So that will give you actually a larger picture of what these soldiers and their family are going through and within the community, and also in the army itself. It's really good. The Commandments, and Hebrew it calls Kipat Barzel.
It's a drama. It's not documentary.
It's not. I said it's a movie.
Yeah.
On what, Molly? On what?
On Prime.
On Prime.
On Prime, and whoever speaks Hebrew and can go log into Sderot. So it's also on Sderot.
Kara, you've got the floor.
Hi. I noticed at the end, at the graduation, one, that it was at nighttime, and if that was purposefully done. And also, I was wondering if you're aware of the percentage of parents or family who come to see their sons graduate, because I thought it was very, very beautiful how some were there taking pictures, but not all of the soldiers had their families there.
Right. I don't know the percentage, but as you said, some come and some don't. If you have seen some of them also, that's one of the things I like in films, is that you could see something and you could give it different kinds of explanations. You know, you see these guys, most of them don't sing a tikva. You know, they were standing there and they weren't singing, you know, and you could ask yourself, why aren't they singing? You know, maybe it's because they don't know the songs. They don't know the words, you know, it's a possibility. Maybe it's because they're not connected to it and they don't, you know, they don't feel strongly, you know, part of it. I don't know, you know, but it's a nice thing to see, you know, when you watch a movie, because when you see Israeli soldiers, or not a Haredi, in singing the tikva, you feel, you know, the singing. It's something very emotional, a lot of respect, a lot of gava, yeah. Yes.
So
Thank
funny
you.
to speak about the tikva. So in the commandments, the region's commander is coming to visit. There is a scene like that he's coming to visit, and part of it, they have to sing the tikva, and they don't know the words. So their commanders are working for days to teach them the words and to sing it. So it's really good. Watch it.
Okay.
Hey, Robin.
Oh,
I'll share something. My son's graduation, I suppose, was at Ammunition Hill. And all he did was tell us, you know, you have to be there at this certain time, blah, blah, blah. And we'll come back from our march and we'll get together. Well, he didn't tell me that every Israeli parent brings a whole, you know, meal and, you know, the whole thing. And we felt so bad that we didn't have all this food. I didn't know the culture of that kind of thing, being American. But thank goodness, you know, everybody shared, and, you know, this family brought us over and this one. But I said to him afterwards, you were supposed to tell me what I was supposed to do. I just thought you show up. But it was the most emotional experience. Besides babies getting born and weddings, it was the most, you know, emotional experience from my family watching that. So.
Oh, thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Wow. Okay, I could tell you one more thing, maybe, you know, at the night before the film was shown in TV, Israeli TV, I started getting phone calls from all kinds of friends in Jerusalem asking, tell me, what's going on with your movie? I said, what do you mean? You know, all Jerusalem, you know, all the Haredi neighborhoods in Jerusalem, they're big, in Hebrew you say pashkevilim. Pashkevilim is big posters. You know, as you go in Mea Shearim, you see these posters on the walls. So this big, it's all Jerusalem is full with your posters of selling your movie. You know, I said, what do you mean? No, you know, someone is selling your movie for the Haredim. You know, so what happened was at first I went into Jerusalem and I looked, you know, I saw all these posters. I went into, I found the Bet Fus. How do you say Bet Fus?
Print house. Print house.
Print house, exactly. You know, print house. And I asked them, you know, I got from them one of these posters. So I have them with me here. This is, as you see here, it says here, all the truth about the Haredi army on a CD, a very good CD for watching at home. Please go into this and that store, you know, and the store is called Noam Productions. My name is Noam too, so people thought it's I told them I don't have nothing to do with it, and they took, someone of them, I don't know who it was, took the film,
Copied it.
put it on a CD, as you see here, on a CD with pictures from the movie, and that guy put all the film on the CD. So it was very interesting to see what happened afterwards. You know, the Haredi extreme people saw the film, didn't understand it. Is that a film, you know, against, or it's a film for? You know, they didn't really get it. And they went into the store. They told them, you have 10 minutes to stop selling this film. If you don't stop selling, you know, this film, we're going to ruin your store, you know. So I got a very nice PR right before, you know, in the day of the screening. I got a whole PR in the newspaper, you know, telling about the story about the movie. So it was, from my point of view, as well as, you know, it was good.
No.
Yeah.
Have you stayed connected with the principal characters of the film? Where are they now, and what?
With some of them I am connected. To Shmulik, I am connected. I met him. I speak with him. He lives in Samaria, in one of the settlements. He says he's light religious. You know, he's not Haredi anymore, and he's a bit. You know, he had 5 children and he got divorced. He's married second time now, and he has a baby from his second wife. As I said, he's a bus driver in Samaria, you know, working there. I could tell you there's a guy, who else could I tell you about is a guy, one of the guys was a bit maleh. Maleh is, you know, full, heavy. He was heavy. He's the officer now. He's the officer in prison, doing well there. One other guy is Aaron. His name is. He was with no hair at that time already. He's an accountant in Tel Aviv. I know the guy Meir who had this conversation with his mother about the shidduch, about getting married. So he lives in the States somewhere. Maybe you could find him there. I don't know where exactly, but he's in the States. And
Is that, you may have said this, and I apologize if I missed it, but is that sort of the experience of the ones who enlist, that they sort of leave the community or become more secular, or
I think the ones who get into the army or who already in secular or really mixed up, or it's not easy for them to go back. But
Okay.
I know today many of them stay in the Haredi community. You know, they find them for themselves different places, easier, you know, more calm, more, you know, but yeah.
Okay.
No, those soldiers that you mentioned that did not come back, they would leave and leave, and they would not come back. Do they get punished for it, like typical soldiers, like using the ugly word deserter?
No, they can't get, you know, people, if they're part of the community, they could be punished. I don't know what means be punished, you know, but if they're part of the community, but most of them, if they are, you know, they're adults, they do whatever they want, you
No,
know,
no, no,
they,
I'm saying when they join the army, and then when they leave and leave and never come back. In other words, they left the army. Do they get punished for that?
As you saw in the beginning of the movie, there was one of them, you know, who left and then come back. So usually the army goes after them, yeah. And yeah, but you know, I think the army is also very concerned about them. You know, he knows it's delicate. It's not, they're not, you know, it's not regular soldiers who just leave the army, and they'll be concerned, and they'll take, you know, I hope they'll do the right thing there. They'll act with them proper.
Any other questions, folks, before we wind up? Speak up, those, because otherwise we're going to be shutting it down. Well,
Okay.
Thank you very much. Again, we want to thank Molly for bringing this to us. She did a yeoman's job doing that and contacting you and working with you. So thank you, Molly, and the Israel Committee. And again, have a great evening, Noam, in Jerusalem here. I mean, in Israel. And thank you, everybody else, for joining us. Stay tuned for additional programming from the Israel Committee. Hopefully, there's going to be many very rich programs. And anybody that's not a member and wants to join us, we'd love to have you. That's paid political announcement. Okay, folks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Amen.